Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Ricada of Ricada Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And if I sound defeated, it's because I am. Total loss. Total defeat. I want to do a segment of the show, or I want to coin a segment of the show because it already exists. And it's called me excusing myself for being late. I don't have a good excuse today. I woke up at like 10. I woke up at 10:10. I taught today, which is, man, I go through this thing. I teach at our homeschool co-op. And I have the blessing to teach teenagers, late junior high school kids, to about whatever kind of topic I want to teach. I mean, I have to develop a little curriculum each year. And some years I take it easy because it's easy to prepare topic some years. And we read the Constitution and we talk through it and kind of explain what it says. Which is a combination of not hard at all, but also pretty damn tricky, right? Like so many people get the Constitution wrong. So, but the reason it's easy is because the material's all right there. You don't need a bunch of external topics. Like you'll reference some cases here and there to kind of talk about maybe how we got to something like Wickard versus Filburn. When you get to the Commerce Clause, you got to talk about Wickard versus Filburn because it changed the entire scope of how the Commerce Clause works. It made the Dormant Commerce Clause allows the regulation of damn near anything, and it made Obamacare occur. Now, it's not how Obamacare stuck around, but it's why they thought they could do Obamacare. They were surprised when Roberts just gave them an argument that no one made, that it was a tax and spend power. But the idea was that Obamacare was passed under the Commerce Clause. So you got to talk about Wickard versus Filburn a little bit. You got to talk about Marbury versus Madison. And I don't give them my full spiel on Marbury versus Madison because that would take an entire year. But, you go through some of these cases, but largely it's all right there. And it's an entry-level course. So you don't have to like really get into the weeds of these cases. You just have to basically say that in Marbury versus Madison, the courts decided that they would protect all of us from unconstitutional uses of power, and those decisions would be binding. Cool. But then you mention, you point out this isn't really in the Constitution. Some people, Kurt, would argue that it's implied as a necessary portion of how they're going to decide these cases and controversies. And it's not a bad argument, right? But it's still not in there. It ain't there. It's just not in there. So they went outside the Constitution to tell other people they can't go outside the Constitution. You have to explain how these things kind of happen when you're explaining the system. And with it comes little side lessons into civics and balance of powers and all that stuff, checks and balances. All right. This year, though, I'm not teaching that. And I like and don't like teaching it. Again, it's easy to develop the curriculum because it's just the Constitution. And you basically, we have about 16 or 17 class periods. And you get through the Constitution pretty well in those class periods, figuring some extra time for maybe cancellation or whatever. This year, I'm doing a different subject. And some years I pick the curriculum each year, and some years I pick something different. This year, I decided to do it differently. And this year, I am teaching 4 major lines of argument that motivated, conservative, Christian-raised teenagers will be getting into. And gun control, abortion, marriage, and freedom of religion, right? Or freedom from religion. What is it? Ooh. So instead of doing like a read through of the Constitution, we're going to actually take a deeper dive into the case law, the jurisprudence history of each of those subjects. Pretty fun, but way different because I have to develop the curriculum. You have to go through, find the major cases, make sure you're not missing any, grab the key points from them, maybe grab appropriate excerpts from them, because you don't want to drop like a 100-page opinion on these kids. They don't want to read that. They're not going to. I wouldn't read it now. It's a joke. Depends on the context. But for 16 class periods, you're probably not going to get them to read through these things. And even if they do, they don't have the background to understand, the full measure of what's being said and all of this stuff. They're not reading the language of the law. They haven't been trained for it. And I don't teach kids as if they're children. I teach them as if they are a lay adult. And what I mean is I don't dumb down my language. I don't dumb down the understanding of concepts to where I expect them to be. I talk to them as if they were, 25 years old. And then if they have questions, we go through it. Well, I'll explain concepts and break them down, but I don't treat as if I expect them to be someone dumb. Does that make sense? Because I find that if you have a low expectation of children, they will live up to your low expectations. If you have a high expectation of children, they will live up usually to your high expectation and probably exceed it. So it's a very straightforward class. Tons of profanity, obviously. That's a joke. I sometimes have to bite my tongue in class because I get used to talking like this and say jokes that are I don't say them, but I think them, that are like lightly jokingly racist or referential to something. And I'm like, I had to do that today. I was like, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. It was because we're talking about gun control, history of gun control. The actual history of gun control in America is very anti-black. Like it just is. They didn't want the slaves shooting them. Anyway, so this year we're doing that. And today, though it's harder to develop the curriculum, the ability to explore through these topics is truly like fun, and you get to really get into it. And bringing them through kind of the background of the jurisprudence on the Second Amendment was fun, but just getting started on it and getting these kids to understand first what the Second Amendment says, and then what the Second Amendment says is great. For example, and I know we're going to intro the show in a minute, but people are filtering in. This is some exposition time. I asked, I said, what's the Second Amendment say? Does anybody know? One was like a right to keep arms, right to keep firearms, blah, 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 blah. Kind of went around. So tell them the text of the Second Amendment. It's 2 clauses, all of that stuff. And we kind of focus on the second clause mostly. So the second clause, what's it say? And the point of this is to explain why the Supreme Court exists. Because they're like, well, it's really straightforward. It's your right to keep and bear arms. So like, is it yours? Is it your right to keep and bear arms? And they're like, yeah. I said, why? They're like, well, it says, right? Your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Pretty simple. I said, I want it to be simple, but it doesn't say a person's right to keep and bear arms. It says the people's right to keep and bear arms. They're like, so? And I'm like, does the people mean the person or the people? Is it individualized? Is it collectivized? The people appears in other areas of the Constitution, and it's used in a collective sense. So why here is it person? Or is the people mean the person's right, the individual's right? It's because the Supreme Court said so, but they didn't say so until 2008. Now, a whole bunch of people understood that prior to 2008, but they didn't say it. And it could have gone the other way. In fact, there's a huge argument that it goes the other way. It's a predominant argument still that the people is referring to a collective right, and it's referential to the militia listed above or listed prior. And so what does it mean? This is why the Supreme Court exists, to turn these issues into decisions. And you kind of blow these kids' minds when you go through the history of like the Second Amendment jurisprudence. It's really only 4 major cases. Now, there's other cases in there that touch on the Second Amendment before that it hinges on. That's Miller and then Heller. So you go 1939 to 2008. Then you got McDonald, which just basically restates Heller. And then you have Bruin in 2021. Like, that's it. And they're like, wait, is that not many? And I'm like, well, how many opinions do you think the First Amendment has every year? They're like, I don't know, like one. It's like, no, a bunch of them every year. This one gets overlooked. And so getting to explore that is just, it's just really fun. And I got to do that today. And it's great. But the purpose is not to do what is expected in a Christian homeschool co-op setting that is highly conservative, right? I could go in there and just wave the banner of the Second Amendment and be like, yeah, the Second Amendment's awesome. It's your individual right. You should just go out and say that everybody has an individual right. But knowing the history of how the Second Amendment has been developed through the courts, give these kids both sides of the story. They already believe that the Second Amendment is cool because it is. They already know that. They've been raised in households that typically align with those conservative ideas. And so that part isn't necessary. It's not fun to teach when everybody kind of like agrees. The interesting parts are challenging them with the struggle and the wrestling of these decisions and how they sculpt society. So got to do that today, but that also meant I was up way earlier. I got a little 90-minute nap in after my shows yesterday. And then I was up way earlier than normal because I didn't get to spend more time sleeping. So after that, and we finally get home sometime after 5, I was like, I just lay down for 30 minutes. And I was out till 10:10. And woke up, was like, oh shit, I gotta make a show. So that's why the show link was late. And then I was late because I still had some stuff to do before getting done. Anyway, we're gonna do a show segment on why am I late and or also gay. I already do that segment. I'm just officially canonizing it now. Okay, here we go. I have to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do this, but it has to be done. I already know everything that's going to be said about this coverage. I am not talking about drama. I know everybody's going to say I'm talking about drama. There's a dramatic way to talk about this. There is definitely a way to engage in drama on this topic. There 100% is. And I'm going to work so fucking hard to not do it, okay? But do you ever see someone and like, you just want to tell them like, don't do it. Please don't. Like, don't do this. And then they keep doing the thing, and you know they don't believe you. You know they don't believe you. They think you have like a motivation or whatever. And that's fine. And like I'm the cause of probably a lot of that, right? Like I know. But I'm also not. I'm also not the cause of a lot of that. Because genuinely, I didn't want to be involved in the conflict and the drama around it. And when I got pulled in, it's like late and a whole bunch of weird stuff has happened. But that being said, when you have an issue of trust, it doesn't matter what you say. It's not going to be taken in the manner that you might intend it. And I do. But I'm not going to get into the back and forth spat around this. And I could. And it would be funny to do so because I say I don't like drama. I don't like covering drama that involves people I know, like, and interact with, or me. But I mean, drama is entertaining. Like, it just is. So it's like it's a temptation to dive into it. What I don't like about it is what it ends up doing. This shit right here is what it ends up doing. Covering a topic that is involved in the drama is fucking impossible. But the topic needs to be covered because people who are watching this show know about it, and it's happening, and it's something that can be spoken to specifically by me and people I know. So I'm going to try. I know I'm going to fail, but I'm going to try really hard to cover Eric's video about Trademark today. And again, this has nothing to do with me. I'm gonna make that very clear. He doesn't talk about me. He doesn't mention me. There's no like slights or hidden meanings or anything. The video he put out is 100% about the ISOM trademark issue. And that's kind of where the good stuff about the video stops. And I'm not trying to be mean or rude, and I'm not his lawyer. That's pretty clear, right? That seems obvious at this point. And I have no right to speak into advising him on what to do. And I can't. Like, I'm not going to. I don't want to advise him legally on what to do. But he shouldn't do this at all. And so, in my opinion, it's not my business. It's not my lawsuit. I'm not going to say, well, his lawyers should advise him to X and Y, because on this one, I don't care what his lawyers have advised him to do. I think all around, this is a move that is not wise. And I've been trying to figure out how to do this subject today. So what I'm really happy to do, though, is bring on someone who can help me talk through this. And they just got here. But before he pops in, ultimately, I just want to say I think this video is I think it's full of missteps in what's going on. But again, I'm not involved in any of that decision. I'm not running that business. I'm not in the marketing. I don't know what their strategies and goals are. To me, it's some mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, I'm going to bring on a friend to help me with this. And I don't know if it's a good idea for him either. What's up, man?
Hello. Good evening. How are you?
I'm great. Always a pleasure to get to speak to Uncle E. How you doing, man?
Yeah, it's been a while. I got it. I was very excited. I mean, listen, today's been a great day. Phillies just swept not the Mets, the Braves. We already swept the Mets. Swept the Braves back to Atlanta. And those bitch, they came over here to Philadelphia on a red carpet private jet. They had all Ted Turner's cameras flashing on them like they were movie stars. They came here to Philadelphia, my blue collar town, and we beat their fucking asses right back. We're not on Rumble yet, so I'm editing myself. I'm censoring my curses.
You don't have to censor your curses.
Censoring my slurs.
I've already killed it.
Oh, okay. Well, we sent them right back to Atlanta, those pretty boys, and the Phillies are moving on. So this is a great night. It's a great night. And then I got an invite from you. I'm like, surely this is about the Phillies. Let's go. Let's talk about Trey Turner. Let's talk about Nick Castellanos.
In fact, I've never talked about anything but baseball my entire life.
Sounds great. So let's go. Let's begin. Let's start the live stream. Let's start the video that we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah, it's a live stream of the baseball game. I think that'll be okay.
People will like that.
Do you have any introductory thoughts on the video? I mean, All Caps Comics on Twitter has been increasingly commenting on things like Trademark. And what I've seen from All Caps Comics on Twitter is an addressing of the audience, right? Like that's what I've seen mostly, is addressing the audience on these issues and some of the pitfalls that an audience can, even in good intentions, make for a creator, a company, a brand, right? Like, is that fair? Is that what you've seen from All Caps Comics? I don't know.
Yes, and that's why they've been fired today. The employee that's running the All Caps Comics official Twitter can't shut their mouths about a lawsuit. You know, when it comes to a lawsuit, you need to shut your fucking mouth. Stop talking about it. Stop trying to impress people. And stop giving the other side, the opposing side, fodder to attack you with. So
you
I
fired your employee.
had
That's what
to,
you're saying.
yeah. I'm putting a much bigger pussy involved of the All Caps Comics Twitter now, so that they're not. I don't want people speaking truth. Just sell the comics. Don't speak truth to the masses. Don't try to make people wake up and smell the coffee. Don't try to change anyone's behavior. Just sell the comics. That's what I said. But I'm here tonight to stand by my employees' words. And what they're saying, what they've been saying, pretty clearly, is that this situation is dangerous. It's a powder keg, and I kind of feel, I suspect, and you can tell me how you feel about this. This might be me being paranoid, but a lot of the message that was put across on Twitter by the founder of ISOM Ministry.
Yeah, we covered that yesterday on the show.
Seemed like a trap. Seemed like a piece of flypaper to catch retards. That's what it seemed like to me. And I have to say, it may have caught a few, because what they're looking for is they're looking for people to denigrate their ministry on behalf of Eric July. That's what they're looking for. And they're going to beat the shit out of him with that in court and say, look at the damage that they have done to our good ministry brand. Look at what this guy has done to our business. Now, there are very few people that I care for more than Eric July. And I want to see him protected. I want to see his business flourish and grow for the good of all indie comics. So I support I support the basic ideas that the All Caps Comics Twitter account was espousing, which is everybody shush.
Yeah. To be very clear, because I don't want this to come across in a misrepresented way, but when you talk about you said on behalf of Eric July, you don't mean at the behest or request of Eric July. You mean that people like the Rippaverse comics, the Rippaverse brand, whatever it is, and they're acting, in response to what they perceive as an attack. Not that Eric is requesting them to go out and do it, right? Like that doesn't seem to be. I haven't seen any direct calls to action.
How would I know? I have no knowledge either way about that.
Right.
I assume that that's true, but I don't know.
I mean, anything can happen behind closed doors, but I don't want to insinuate that is happening, because I haven't seen anything of it. I hadn't seen you indicate that anywhere.
No,
so I just want to make sure, because I don't know if you know this, Ethan, but some people will take stuff that is said on the internet and completely misunderstand it. Like that on occasion very rarely happens.
I imagine it's got to happen more than once. Like, it just seems likely that it's going to happen, especially with people that intend to misunderstand others, people with an agenda.
Yeah.
I believe that to be true.
So, getting back to that statement, though, I agree. And the statement did something for me that it made me reconsider my initial assessment of their lawsuit strategy. And I don't know if they actually had this assessment when they first, kind of filed and made their initial announcements about it. But it was, I was looking at the trademark dispute as they're selling stuff off of our name and enriching themselves, which is, of course, one of the issues in trademark. But they raised a different issue, which is not that they're enriching themselves, but they're damaging our potential to raise revenue by damaging our brand by association. And that is, of course, a separate but also critically important issue. It's not just someone making money off of your brand. It's someone taking your ability to generate revenue. And I believe all caps even mentioned that, the core of their business is donations and, these charitable donations. Maybe that wasn't all caps, but I think so. And that impacting the ability to raise donations by having a negative association could be critically damaging for the brand, right? Like that seems
It's
fair.
got to be. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have people finding these videos all over YouTube, and they are all over YouTube. They're very popular videos discussing ISOM and the Rippaverse. It's a runaway success. It's
Right.
everybody's interested in it. And there are all these videos talking about possible charity fraud and all this stuff that's just like, we know it's like probably bullshit. It's like, but the problem is the videos are out there, and because they're out there, the ISOM, it'd be okay if like ISOM was not a shared name. It'd be okay if people want to accuse me of fraud for all caps comics and cyber fraud. That's my problem. I'll deal with that. Nobody else is going to be harmed by that because I'm the only person who's doing a comic book called Cyber Frog, and I own all caps comics. So all of that hatred is on me. Nobody else is being harmed by it but me and my business.
Right.
But of course, people only say glowing things about Cyber Frog and all caps comics because stuff is really good. Yeah, you got your package.
I did. I reviewed it on my locals last night. Just to be clear, I have not read them, and I wasn't gonna, but I am now. I'm gonna do it because I feel like it's only fair to read your comic and
thank you. Yes,
brutal review of it.
Yes, do it. Give it a great brutal review. I listen. That's important. I mean, you have people that you trust, people that you don't necessarily trust, but you want to hear reviews. You want to get criticism so that you can improve.
Right. And
people aren't reading it. It's no good.
Well, I reviewed just the because I have a shelf full of books that I haven't read, but I love the way they look.
They're called law books.
Yeah, I do like those. I don't own any of those because they're just a waste. They're such a waste of money now because everything's online and you need
on the internet.
You need a huge shelf. But no, these are all Warhammer books, and I've read a bunch of them, but I fell way behind. But they're beautiful. Like that's what I like about them. So I reviewed just a general craftsmanship of what was in the Wreck Planet box. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. It's great. So
thank you.
Did that, but I will definitely read the book and give a heartfelt review. Heartfelt.
Okay. I'd love to hear it. Because I do respect your opinion. Obviously, you're a very clever guy.
At least one person left us. But so with that though, it's exactly what you said. This brand taint is poisonous, and what people may not get, because I know people are like disputing the relevance of this search argument, but the argument is right now, if you search ISOM on Google, you get the top two results are the Ministry or the ISOM comic, and then you get a bunch of results more about the comic than the Ministry. Like there aren't reviews about the Ministry. There's reviews about the comics and stuff like that. There are questions about it. And some of those questions are negatively associated and stuff like that. So you've got now this issue where ISOM has owned this trademark and used the mark for 25 years. They've gotten to the top of the search results. And people keep bringing up that, well, there's other ISOMs out there. And it's like, yes. And this is the global Ministry that has wide distribution and is most effectively using e-marketing to raise their brand awareness. And they're at the top. But in just 2 years now, the ISOM comic has moved to the second, and in some instances, depending on your Google algorithms, which are slightly tailored, will end up being the first result. Well, now they've got an issue that none of the other ISOM companies have given them, and that is there's a nationally or even globally recognized comic book brand that is being associated with them. And people are trying to make out like that's not an important thing, but it really is. And they stand to start dropping down the list on Google as the talk and chatter about this viral e-marketing campaign increases. Now, to be clear to everybody, that does not mean that search engine alone is a justification for a trademark infringement. And it also doesn't mean that search engines are under any obligation to optimize or prioritize an existing mark and the use of that mark. Like they're not entitled to the first place, but they are entitled to their mark and the use of that mark in trade. And so the answer, I said this yesterday, the answer to all of these questions, like, well, you know, they're not trying to do this. Other people are causing this, or other people are talking about it, which is driving up the, well, the answer is always, you didn't have to use the mark. If it's infringing, you didn't have to use it. You could have used any other mark to market this product, and you didn't. So the question still remains, is it infringing? It doesn't matter what set of circumstances makes the infringement damaging or a threat to the brand. It's just, is it infringing? Because you didn't have to use it. Now, if it's not infringing, they're fine, right? A court can find in Eric's favor that this is not an infringing use of the mark. It's starting to become more of a problem, though, like than it was initially, I think. And that is in large part due to people's active discussion of this and their very fiery defense. I mean, there are people out there right now trashing this ministry, calling them fake Christians, non-Christians, trying to use
I hope Eric's discouraging that. I really do. I hope he is not denigrating or I hope he's not questioning their Christianity or having his fans do that on his behalf. That would be a terrible mistake. A terrible mistake. And maybe, at some point, that's a double-edged sword of fandom, isn't it? You get people who love you very much and love your product and want to defend you and your product. And so maybe they act and it seems like they're acting on your behalf. They can do damage to your reputation. Listen, I've had that happen to me. So I completely understand. But yeah, trashing this Christian ministry just seems like a bad look, as it were.
You've had to protect the Comicsgate trademark from two different negative associations. That's fair, right? Like,
that's why I'm commenting on this now. I know a little bit. I don't know anything. Like, I'm not in your league, because I'm not a lawyer. I'm just some chud from New Jersey. But like, I know a little bit about it because I'm in the process of defending my trademark for Comicsgate. Which I put into use and, I've owned since 2018. And then all of a sudden, this guy named Preston Poulter decided that he was going to dispute my mark. He was going to apply for it. And before it was granted to him at all, he announced that he had it and then started applying it to actual comic books that he was publishing, a few of which were, in my opinion, they were comic books that actual comic skaters would be upset to be associated with.
Yeah,
there were images of children, and you've seen this stuff.
I've covered it extensively. We don't have to go into it.
I don't want to talk about it.
People took umbrage, but that's not the first time you've defended the mark. The first time you defended the mark was actually Vox Day, who, incidentally, after that, I ended up talking to him several times. He's a very interesting guy, just in general. But I haven't talked to him now in a couple of years. I probably should check in and see how he's doing. But yeah, he was not as hostily as Preston, maybe, but he was offering or intending to basically take the Comicsgate mark. And I think he was asserting a desire to protect it or something, or bring it under his own. And you disputed that. And then he ended up backing off. It didn't have to go to a court.
Right.
issue.
Yeah. Like I don't mind Vox Day. I like talking to him. It's like we don't have a problem with each other. But his attitude was Comicsgate should be a far right movement.
Right.
And I just didn't think that was the answer. I didn't think that's where we were going to go with Comicsgate. And so I threatened to take him to court over it. And he backed down immediately. He stopped using the mark, which I appreciated. It wasn't a big deal. Sometimes you want to give people a chance to sort of deal with this out of court if possible. No, but I don't want to hurt anyone, but some people need to go to court. It seems like they insist upon it. So,
well, you demanded something simple. Stop using the mark, and he stopped using the mark.
Yeah.
We don't know the details of what was demanded. Eric has a little bit of them in the video today, and he says that they're an unreasonable request. Now, what is reasonable to one person may not be reasonable to another, but I've got some information just kind of looking around today about the ISOM ministry and the amount of money. And we'll say it right up front, or I'll say it right up front. The ISOM ministry over the past 2 years has brought in about $1.2 million of revenue. That revenue is generated from grants, from charitable foundations, as well as, individual donations.
As well as suing comic book creators.
They actually had the past 2 years, and maybe even longer, $0 in legal fees, as far as I can tell.
Wow.
So I know some people are accusing them of being copyright trolls or whatever, but I was kind of curious because a lot of times, there are these charities like the Susan B. Komen Foundation that spend a huge portion of their income on legal and not on other, not on their main charitable work. But they take in 1.2 million in revenue the past 2 years. It's down from prior years, but hovering in that 1.2 area. And their managers, including the CEO who is tweeting about this, they earn $0 in salary. So they do have some employment costs purportedly.
And they obviously have some incentive to rob Eric July, because right now they're making $0 and he's making the big money. So why wouldn't they sue the fuck out of him and cheat him and swindle him?
Well, they wouldn't earn a salary just by suing him. Like, that's not how that would work. It would go to the ministry, and then it would be distributed how the ministry distributes stuff. But they do have some staff. Typically, it'd be administrative staff, and that staff does get paid something. I think it's $300,000 a year total. I don't know how many employees that is or anything, but the managers do not make any money from the ISOM ministry. They do it for free. So I just wanted to get that out there for people to get a perspective on what's going on here, because people are like, the ministry sells itself as the largest publisher of Christian materials, but it's not a huge business. In 2 books, they've made 4 years of ISOM's income. Like, that's a lot of impact to their brand. I mean, that's a huge, that's more money than they make and pull in just two books in 1 year of business. So that's quite a big thing. And so once I found that out, because I thought maybe they made like 25 million a year, they're a huge thing, but no. And so once I found that out, I was like, oh, well, they could have asked for quite a bit of a licensing fee then. I mean, if each one of these books is going to be 2 years plus of income for them,
yeah, the
licensing fee of using the brand that they've developed that they're now saying you're infringing on could be pretty significant. I mean, I don't know what it would be. Maybe it's 10%. Maybe it's 25. Who knows? It could, in theory, they're entitled to 100% if the mark is infringing. Like, that's the idea, is that you're using their intellectual property. But just to kind of get some numbers perspective.
Now, what comes with if let's just say I'm Eric and I'm talking to them and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to license ISOM from you guys. Do I get to make fun of do the people who run that church, are they part of the IP that I'm licensing? Can I make fun of them? Can I have ISOM in my comic book beat them up in the comic book, humiliate them, accuse them of crimes? Because I'm licensing them. I'm licensing everything that they have. I should be able to show images of bad things happening to their buildings and things, and my character coming to save the day, or not.
Licensing would tend to come with some restrictions. Like any other contract, you would probably have a non-disparagement clause.
What?
Yeah, I mean, something like that would likely be in there. Something about, not damaging the brand itself. And that can be not just through disparagement, but through associative acts. Like, we see this all the time. People get fired constantly or released from contracts constantly because they go on Twitter and say something that the contractor doesn't agree with. And once you do that, you've now brought a negative association to the brand. And I think people might misunderstand how constraining that can be for a brash online creator. I wouldn't enter into a contract that doesn't allow me to do that, except for one time because it was funny. And that was when I did a Raid Shadow Legends stream on Twitch. But I couldn't say anything bad about Raid Shadow Legends or the company. So
if I'm paying them $600,000 a year, I want to be able to call them gay and retarded all the time in my comic books.
Well, you can write that in the contract. You can negotiate that in.
Oh.
Like you can do that. By the way, can I get a license for All Caps Comics? No reason.
No.
But
the books are closed on that one.
But that's part of the issue here is there might be a simple resolution, and there very similarly might not be one. That might not be able to be reconciled. We don't know the details. We get a hint from Eric. He says they were looking for an ongoing revenue. And we're going to watch, I swear we're going to watch this video, but the ongoing revenue he's very surprised by, but you're intending to continue exploitation of the mark.
And licensing fee.
Right. Exploitation is not a negative word in this context. It is to use and profit from the mark. And so if you're going to continue using it, the licensing fee would be ongoing. Like if you're not buying an IP outright and you're licensing it to make like a series of movies, you're going to be paying on every movie you make. So again, this is one of those things where a bunch of stuff that was said to me seemed it was strange. The reaction to it was strange. But yeah, it's, and you mentioned you hope he wasn't like denigrating their brand or whatever. And he takes a couple shots at them that I just think it's all unwise. And it all goes back to this what you were saying about that tweet that they put out as a trap. It really looks to be a trap, and it really looks like a lot of people are falling in for it. I mean, they're outright attacking the faith and integrity of this ministry. They're generating negative commentary on this ministry in direct response to it, associated directly with the ISOM comic book. Now, these aren't agents of the comic, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter in brand confusion, because brand confusion isn't about who done it, who caused it, or what caused it. Brand confusion is about, does an average reasonable person see these things and associate them and become confused about who is the owner of the product or the generator of it? And that's the risk.
I think I understand. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go get my bottle of water because, we're going to be in for it with this video. Can't wait.
Yeah. Yep. With that, we're going to hit a couple of the super chats while Ethan's gone. The Amateur Iconoclast says, since your nose is long enough to reach into tomorrow, how are things going for the day of jihad? Smell any burning infidels or feel any fragments from IEDs? A little bit of peppering on the nose, a little bit of peppering, some stippling on the edge, just on the edge. So, really, we're still in the east, but as it progresses, we'll probably feel some more coming towards my face. So that I am kind of like I don't want anything bad to happen, but I'm kind of curious how it's going to go. Right, like that's scary. This whole situation is kind of awful with that whole like jihad thing. White guy named Tyrone says, hey, Nick, can you shame me for not asking a woman I like from work to hang out today? I need some motivation. Thanks. First of all, I'm going to shame you for talking to a woman. But second of all, I'm going to shame you for talking to her and then not ultimately asking you to hang out. What are you, gay? Were you trying to get fashion advice? Were you giving her tips on lipstick? Eyeshadow? Were you?
They were both lying on her bed on their tummies and kicking their feet behind their heads.
Yeah,
like kind of
holding pillows.
Yeah,
holding pillows. Right?
So cute.
Embarrassing. You are a white guy named Tyrone. If you weren't a white guy named Tyrone, you definitely would have asked her to hang out. What is wrong with you? Oh my God. Get a little bit more cultured, sir. All right. Well, I've got the video pulled up, and this topic is impossible.
Pull up. I just always wanted to say that. I've never been able to say that. Pull up.
Oh God.
Oh,
here we go. So this is the opening frame.
Holy shit. Can you please, is there a way that like videos can control that opening frame just a little bit more? Can you pick an opening frame?
This is the opening frame, to be clear. I didn't do anything to this. I don't believe.
Now, hold on a second. Before we begin, pause. Our statement And then there's a straight line there. No, put it back up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm commenting. Straight line. A Christian organization in their frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah.
He put Christian in quotes, scare quotes.
Yeah. Usually you would do that in English writing to indicate that the term is not being used sincerely.
Yes.
So,
I'm going.
okay, that's a little better. That's what you're referring to before with this. Are they denigrating this organization, or is he? And again, I'm not his lawyer, and social media is done in a very specific, a different way than traditional business. The traditional advice is always shut up when you're involved in a lawsuit. I don't fully believe that when you're a social media person or company. I think that there is a lot of power in leveraging your brand.
Do, Nick? No, what good can it do? It can only do harm. I mean,
I have an answer for you.
Okay.
It may not do good in a lawsuit, but it may do good in the overall social media brand, which could outweigh the negative of the lawsuit, especially if you're going to lose. There's that chick who she was a YouTuber. I think she defamed Cardi B, and she lost her lawsuit and had to pay like $4 million, a YouTuber. But her YouTube channel grew so immensely from defaming Cardi B and from sticking by it that she probably ended up out earning the defamation. So at that point, protecting or preserving your reputation and your, I guess, persona might be more valuable than what the cost of the suit is in the long run. Might be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that. I can understand that.
That's why social media changes the rules a little bit. It also has massive risks. And in a trademark suit, things are, again, it's not about who is trying to associate the brands together. It's about, do they get associated to a reasonable person? Vito kept saying a rational person. That's because Vito's dumb.
Irrational.
It's reasonable personal. It's a reasonable person. That's the standard. And that just means the averagely informed consumer, not the highly specified online indie comics consumer who knows that Eric July is not an employee or an arm of the ISOM ministry, but just a person, and not the ISOM ministry's consumer, just a reasonable consumer out there. Like, oh, I'm going to Google this, and then here's what I find. So that's a place where I think a lot of people are missing this. Now, I'm going to play this. If you need me to stop it, just say something. Otherwise, I may stop it. But let's take a look.
Okay.
To be honest with you, this is shocking. The International School of Ministry is a video-based Bible school. According to their own words, their vision is to turn every local church in the world into a ministry training center and then into a church planting center. According to their statement of faith, they believe in the
Okay. I gotta start right away. Yeah, their goal is to equip churches with materials for churches to spread the ministry of their faith. Like, that is not an absurd goal or anything else like that. And I've seen people like talk about like what they're trying to do, and it's weird because that's just that's what their business is: distribute materials to help spread ministry in churches.
Have they tried comic books?
I don't think that they have. However, they're not the only Christian publishing company, and other Christian publishing companies have created comic books. I have some of them. There's actually something called the Action Bible, which is a comic book style telling of the entire Bible, geared towards teens. You've got I've got a couple smaller, like, actual comic books. I went to Walmart and there was a guy with a table selling Christian themed comic books. Like, that was, a thing that does occur. So people should know that. I don't think that ISOM, the ministry, has done it, but I'm also not sure what would preclude them from attempting to do that at any point.
It's very common. Chick tracts, of course, were comic books made by Christians to promote Christianity.
Right.
It's what Christians do. They do make comic books.
Yeah. Shockingly, they do. Christians make a lot of things because as the right has learned to try and inject itself into culture because they've been failing at that for a very long time. Christians learned a long time ago. That's why contemporary Christian music exists. They're like, we can't just have only hymns. We want people out there singing music that is more relevant today. And we even have Christian rappers and stuff like that going out and rapping for Jesus or whatever. And some of it is like fully profane and some people don't like it. But hey, they're placing themselves into various subcultures, and that's how ministry is done. So this is not out of pocket to think that this company that publishes things might publish a comic book at some point. So here he's on to their mission statement.
Deity of our Lord Jesus Christ in his virgin birth and in his bodily resurrection. They believe the Bible to be the inspired and infallible word of God. And this is partially why I'm shocked that a Christian organization would do such a thing and bring us into a baseless trademark lawsuit. Before I proceed with the rest of our statement, I'd like to be very clear. We were not in any communication with Good Shepherd or the International School of Ministry prior to the filing of the lawsuit. There were no obvious opportunities presented to engage in a good faith conversation before the lawsuit was filed about what's being alleged.
Wait a second. What he's saying is that he just did ISOM. He started his comic book. And at no point when he was working on his comic book did he approach them or did they approach him initially? So he's shocked that they're approaching him now.
Yeah, and I think he's trying to imply that they could have approached him prior to filing the lawsuit. But there's no requirement for them to do that. You don't have to do that. One of the things that ISOM, and when I talk about what ISOM has said about their lawsuit, please understand that I'm recognizing the bias of their own interests, right? Like they're saying this in their own self-interest. But one of the things they said is that filing the lawsuit is an indication that they are protecting their mark. They had not served the lawsuit. They have now decided to serve the lawsuit, but they filed it and then reached out to Eric to try to resolve it, according to them, prior to actually serving it. Now, I don't think this is a required step of trademark protection, but it is a step that shows evidence that they're attempting to protect their mark. There's now a filing on the Pacer system. You can go look up the filing that this exists, and everyone can see that a case was filed. And then if it's resolved, they can just resolve it. They can drop the case, and nothing happens. They could wait it out and let the case just expire after 6 months of no service. It'll go away. That is evidence of how to do it. It's not the only way to do it, though. You can protect a mark through communications without filing a lawsuit, but this is the way they chose to do it. But there's no incumbent need for them to do that. I think what Eric is getting at, and this is based on his previous statement, that they believe that the Bible is the inspired and infallible word of God, is there's a misunderstanding, which is common in the New Testament, that Christians are not allowed to engage in the legal system. This comes from a couple places where it suggests how you deal with lawsuits, particularly.
That's why we hire Jews.
Right, exactly.
We don't do it,
But the idea, the express words are that suing another believer, you should approach them first, try to resolve it. If you can't do that, bring a brother with you to help resolve the issue. And if you can't resolve it, then actually to show mercy and give up your rights is one of the implied sort of meanings. But you have to understand the context of Paul talking about this in the New Testament, when Paul is living under Roman rule and Christian rights are not respected, and some of them are killed or beaten or jailed for being Christians. There's a reason he's telling Christians not to engage in the pagan legal system that doesn't recognize the church. These days, we don't live in Rome. We don't live in 1st or 2nd century Rome. It's wildly different. And that teaching may not apply. And the idea that you would hold a Christian organization who's alleging that you're taking their rights and property to a standard that you yourself don't hold is silly. Like, that's like saying, well, Jesus said, turn the other cheek, so I could just beat a Christian and he should never fight back. I mean, maybe that's the biblical principle, but is anyone expected to do that? I don't know. Maybe maybe some people, but I don't think anybody would suggest that reasonably in terms of being beaten. But yeah, and does that make them fake Christians? I don't think so, but maybe it does.
They should just allow their trademarks to be exploited and pirated. I mean, is that what we do? I mean, I don't think so. I think we do have to protect, even when other Christians are inadvertently perhaps trespassing on our property. We must still protect our property.
Zero Smoke. Nick, are you saying we should discount most of what Paul says because the context is different? We aren't living in Rome anymore. Most, I don't know, but specific parts of it that relate to his beliefs about Jesus Christ coming back within 20 years, and then his shifting sort of attitudes around those things. Like when Paul's like, you know what? Don't worry about not being a slave. Just be happy being a slave and live a good life, so that your master has a potential to be saved, right? Like, don't worry about freedom and liberation. Don't do that. You just live under slavery. Or maybe when Peter is talking to us about living under even tyrannical governors and managers, that we should stay in bad jobs, do good work, even when we're beaten in our jobs, even when we're degraded, even when we're not paid well, or when our government is in tyranny over us, because God instilled all governors and governments. So we should just live in tyranny. That's how American Christians act all the time, right? We don't try to live in a free society. We're just happy when tyranny comes and Christians all lay down and don't vote or voice their opinions. Like, we do this all the time. Like, people discount various aspects of what Peter and Paul have said based on the context because it made way more sense living under oppression and exile than living in a free society. So you got to be discerning on this stuff, or you could take it word for word. I just don't think anybody does at all, even the best Christians. But that being said, I'm skeptical of this. And Rip-a-Verse, I don't know if Eric did it, but Rip-a-Verse has engaged the legal system to protect its intellectual property through the use of DMCAs. It's kind of what kicked this off. So is Eric saying that the Christian ministry should be held to a Christian standard, but he should not? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure how that plays out. So again, this is all going towards he's implying that they're not following their own faith. And I think it's a weird track in this case, but let's go.
Made aware that the International School of Ministry had any issues with the Rip-a-Verse until the lawsuit was filed. Not only did this make this ordeal public, but it was also news to us. So if anybody alleges that Good Shepherd just wanted to get clarification, we find that filing a lawsuit is an interesting way to go about it. Despite all of this, we still had no problems entering into a good faith discussion with the International School of Ministry. If the main issue was centered around assuring there was distinction between the Rip-a-Verse and the International School of Ministry, we were open to negotiations. We disagree that anyone would truly confuse a ministry and a comic book company or comic book character, but we were certainly...
This statement is an issue. ISOM is not the comic book company. And people are conflating ISOM, the character and the branding of the character, with the comic book company, which is Rip-a-Verse LLC. And I think that's part of the problem. Because when you Google ISOM, you get questions like, what is the ISOM comic?
Is the ISOM comic good? And all of that, like, all of the questions seem to be questions about ISOM, the comic book. And that's strange, because their church, they've got the trademark of ISOM, and their religious ministry is also referred to as ISOM. There's people should be saying Rip-a-Verse more, I guess. You should have trademarked Rip-a-Verse and put that out there a little bit more.
It's tough, because when you say the ISOM comic, like, what is the ISOM comic? I mean, someone could read, what is the International School of Ministry's comic? If they have no idea, or if they've only heard of the International School of Ministry, like, it's not outlandish to think that. And again, this is because the associations are building as the virality of Eric's success takes over chatter on the internet. And now, as the virality of the lawsuit and discussion around it keeps bringing this up and more closely associating these two properties. And that's the issue, is we know that Eric has nothing to do with the ministry. Like, that's obvious to us. But people who don't know anything about this corner of the internet would have no specific reason that they should. And those questions generated by Google search results are worded in such a way that could imply ownership by one entity of the comic book character. And so that is a problem. I know he's saying that as a thing where like they're making a strong position on it, but I don't know if it's the most reasonable position to say it can't be done. Like it is being done. It's actually being done actively when you look at it objectively. It's not fair to Eric.
Well, he's a victim of his own success. As people chatter about him more on the internet, about ISOM, his comic book, it's becoming more of a nuisance to the ministry. It's infringing more. It's taking more focus away. It's creating more confusion. If he were just, kind of under the radar, he'd probably do just fine. But he is conflicting right now, I guess. So there are people who are confusing the two. And the other thing is, what if, when the time comes, because the ministry does publish fiction, they do create entertainment. So when the time comes that they decide to put out their own graphic novel, it's going to be referred to as the ISOM comic book. One would assume.
You would think.
So they have to protect, and this is like, this is the problem. They have to protect their ability to, in the future, make a comic book that would be referred to as the ISOM comic book. Sucks.
Right. And one of the things they brought up in the lawsuit is that every publication that they put out has ISOM branding right on it. So the implied follow-up would be that if they put out a comic book or a graphic novel, ISOM branding would be on the cover. It wouldn't be Good Shepherd Ministries. It would be ISOM, the trademark that they use for their publishing. That's the implied reasoning behind it. And that's another thing people are failing to, I think, realize about the association is what you just brought up. The ministry not having an existing comic book actually complicates this more, because now if they want to at some point put out a comic book, they are competing against their own trademark being used against them. Again, speaking from their side, they're asserting the right to this mark. If Eric's comic book is highly successful and the ISOM ministry puts one out, how are they going to market their book with the branding that they've built over the years? They're now competing with one that has surpassed their branding in 2 years. That's an impossible ladder. Like most people have trouble competing with nothing.
Well, so let me just ask you this. Let's just say I'm not in the hula hoop business. Okay, I make comic books, but I own the trademark for Cyberfrog and making comic books and making toys.
Somebody you're making a car, right?
Yeah, I'm making a little car. Somebody wants to come out with a Cyberfrog hula hoop, and it has nothing to do with Cyberfrog. It's just for some reason they think the word Cyberfrog is awesome, and they make a Cyberfrog hula hoop. Now that's not infringing on my trademark, is it? Because I don't make hula hoops.
You could though. And your trademark covers toys. So if you did make a hula hoop, you'd then be competing against whatever success they have built up. I mean, that's the issue. I think that's what you're hinting at.
Yeah. I'm just asking. I mean, it's like, if, it's like, well, they haven't made a comic book yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they haven't made an ISOM comic book yet. So why would there be confusion? And that would be the question I think that you would want to ask, in court. Like, I'm making an ISOM comic book and they're not. So why bother me?
I've seen this pop up a lot. Moody Morgan says, why haven't they sued ISOM veterinary schools? Well, they're not in any way in the business of veterinary care. And the veterinary school doesn't seem to be, maybe it is, but is it a nationally recognized brand? Do they use global marketing in any association of like printed materials? I don't know. Part of the problem is that people do know about the ISOM comic. Someone said earlier, more people know about the ISOM comic than the ministry. That's not a good thing. for the trademark. And I'm not sure why people keep missing this. The excessive popularity of one mark over the other is irrelevant to who owns the mark and has the right to exploit it. Becoming more popular than the owner of the mark isn't evidence that the person who has become more popular should have it. It's evidence that they are exploiting and associating the ownership of the mark that isn't theirs. Like how do I do this? If you have a Toyota and a Ferrari and I steal your Ferrari and then drive faster than your Toyota, I didn't win the right to your Ferrari. I just showed why taking your Ferrari was damaging to you. That might be a good analogy. Like
what if I have a garage band, and I've had a garage band since 1990 that's trademark called In Sync. In Sync comes out, and they're the biggest boy band in the world. Well, 20 years ago. What happens? Can I sue them?
Yeah, possibly. If you're actually using your garage band in trade, and particularly,
I do some clubs here and there. I'm $20 a night.
It would help if you registered the mark. But yeah, I mean, infringement is infringement. If you own the mark, and especially if it's registered, there's a presumption that your ownership is legitimate, that you're using it in commerce. And then if someone else comes along and takes it, they had a duty to find out if that mark was in use. Like, they had a duty to do it. Rael says maybe they should market better then. Shrug. No, they didn't have to, though. They didn't have to market better. They were marketing. They're suggesting that since Eric has become more successful, which is, I don't know if that's true, but since Eric has maybe better brand recognition now than they did, that they should have done a better job marketing. But they didn't have to do a better job marketing. They owned the thing and they marketed it to their needs, whatever they may be, or to their ability. It doesn't matter. Someone else succeeding beyond you in recognition does not give you a right to their thing, because now they have to market better to try and disassociate with the ISOM comic. You've now put a further burden on them to maintain their status as the top ISOM search result. You've put a further burden on them to now have to create stuff to make a disassociative statement about it. They shouldn't have to do that if the mark is actually infringing. Now, when I say all this, this is assuming the mark is infringing. The court could come out and say these are distinctly different marks. They have different fonts, different graphic styles. That's fine. Like, the court can decide these things and say there's no confusion, and then it's no problem. But right now, their contest is that it is infringing. That's what they're saying, and that it's negatively associating. So again, take all of these statements with the understanding that that's their claim. And when I'm speaking from their perspective, that's what they're saying. When I'm speaking from Eric's perspective, it would be non-infringement, right? Like, that would be the idea. We're not infringing. We're not associated. So sorry about having to clarify all this, but I already know how this is going to be taken. So here we go.
Open to hearing and addressing real concerns. We had some settlement discussions, and we thought that we were on track to finding a mutually beneficial solution. But we were blindsided when the International School of Ministry, a nonprofit, demanded profit from our company to be a part of the negotiation. And
nonprofits make money. Nonprofits make money. Everybody repeat after me. Nonprofits make money. Nonprofits make a ton of money, often a massive amount of money. There's nothing wrong with a nonprofit making money. This is a charity. Charities also make money. Again, profit is the extraction of money from a business for personal gain. That is the profit. So either shared ownership, value through publicly traded stocks, stuff like that is extracted from the company's revenue to make neutral the amount of revenue they have earned. You take the excess and you distribute it to whoever has a right to it. That's profit. Revenue is just the amount of money generated, and nonprofits make a ton of money all the time, constantly. Some of the biggest companies you've ever heard of are nonprofits. And then those what would be profits are just reinvested in the company or in wages or in whatever. That is not a thing. That is a problem. People do this all the time. Same with 501c3 charitable organizations. All they have is a minimum requirement of funds to distribute each year, and it's not a lot, 5 to 10% of revenue, something like that. And as long as they're doing that, they're okay to quote unquote make money. They just can't extract it as profit. And some 501c3s have very high paid, directors. Those directors make millions of dollars, and even less is distributed. In ISOM's case, these guys all make zero, to be very clear about that.
Well, ISOM's case. Oh, you mean the ministry?
Yeah, they make $0. I don't
know.
Shout
out to Nina Infinity, by the way. She's in the chat saying hi to you.
Hey, what's up, Nina? How you doing? So, just to be clear on that, this is something I've seen a million times. It's very weird. Nonprofit, but they're not trying to take your profit. I want to make this minor because these words matter. Words have meanings that matter. If they're taking money from your revenue, even if it's a percentage of profits, which I'm not sure that that's what it would be. I don't know the agreement. But once they have taken money that you are paying for licensing fee, it is no longer profit. It is now operating cost.
It's like they want to license it to them. They want to. We talked about this,
right?
They want money because they want to license the name to them,
right? And so they're not taking your profit at that point. You are incurring a cost to be able to generate revenue, just like a marketing expense, a legal expense, all of these things. It just becomes an expense. It's not a profit. They're not taking your profit. You're having to pay for what you are using. Like if you rented a building, for example, which Rippaverse does, that is not the building landlord is not taking your profit. You are incurring an expense to do business. So I want to make these distinctions because it's very loaded. It's very loaded. And it's part of the reason why this video is, in my opinion, not the best idea.
Wanted this to be perpetual. Again, this is shocking. The demand for our profits doesn't seem to have much to do with the alleged concerns over confusion. But even
you're going to keep making ISOM comics, it would be perpetual. As long as you're exploiting the mark, it will be used. When you stop exploiting the mark, you would purportedly stop paying a licensing fee because you're not licensing it.
Yeah, it's not in perpetuity. It's just until you stop making ISOM comics.
Or I guess stop selling ISOM comics, because if
stop selling them. Yeah,
right. Yeah, that'd be the more precise.
That's not so bad. That doesn't seem like such a bad request, honestly.
It's how all of these industries work. Right? Marvel and DC license properties. Spider-Man was licensed to Sony to make all those movies, including one with Tobey Maguire or whatever, where he sings like an emo guy. They had to pay each time those movies were created, and it was a revenue cut from each of those movies. Like their box offices determined a part of that licensing fee because you're exploiting the mark, you're exploiting the Spider-Man name, and you didn't make it, so they paid for it. This isn't a weird thing. It's actually the normal thing.
Yeah. Even worse, the International School of Ministry is demanding limits on our ability to create, and that's all we want to do as a company: build characters.
What do you think that means? What does he mean by that? Limits on his ability to create. What does that mean?
Well, either it might be referencing what you had stated before, that if they were to grant access to the use of the mark through a licensing agreement, that there would be certain things that you maybe not able to put in the comic book, because if it would be disparaging to the ministry or their mission, they might not want that in there. Now, I don't know if that's what he means, or if he just means they don't want to let him use the name ISOM. Right? I'm not sure.
Well, that doesn't make sense. If he's paying to use the word ISOM, it must mean that they're going to say, look, your comic books must now preach the word of Christ. They must now preach the gospel. They cannot do anything other than that, Yeah. No demons, no hell.
What about underage demons?
No underage, no demonatrixes, none of that.
But yeah, so I mean,
a bad deal.
I would assume that's what they would mean. And is that a weird agreement. Again, as someone who has been around popularly licensed comic book characters, I mean, do brands have sort of ideas about what you can do with a character?
That's a hard pill to swallow. To say, look, not only do I have to pay you for something that I didn't know I was going to have to pay you for, I got to pay you to license a name that I thought I came up with. But now you guys are going to be looking over my shoulders all the time. Do you remember that movie Ed Wood?
Yeah.
Where Ed Wood had to go to Baptist ministers to raise money to make Bride of the Monster, or was Plan 9 from Outer Space. And so he had Baptist ministers changing his script and saying there couldn't be any grave robbing or anything that shamed the Lord. He was annoyed by that. Ed Wood was. He didn't like that idea. He wanted to be able to create the worst movies of all time without interference from religious people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Creative people should be allowed to create the worst shit of all time without religious people looking over their shoulders just because there's some, quid pro quo situation going on and telling them not to put shit in the creative art. That's what I'm saying. That's what Ed Wood ran into.
I agree. And the solution is
what?
Don't use their don't use their thing.
Don't empower them. Yes.
Like if I make a comic book character called Nabisco, and he goes and this is an adult comic, right? So what he does is he ejaculates onto cookies and then force feeds them to children.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's okay, but there might be a company that would have an issue with the Nabisco character.
Nabisco would have a problem with that. They'd be like, you can't do that. We're going to tell you. What if he
looked like a Keebler elf? Like, what if he looked like a Keebler elf and that he was an elf that did that? That's how they frosted the cookies. Like that would be a restriction on my creative process.
Yeah, it's disgusting. You shouldn't be allowed.
I just thought of it too. I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. I need to make this.
Right.
I need to make this right now.
Let's go. We can get you an artist.
We want to give our customers a good time and we want them to have fun. In the words of Neil Gaiman, we strive to make good art.
Neil Gaiman? That's weird.
Yeah, his name is a command. It's a sort of homosexual command.
Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman.
Oh my gosh.
There's another guy in comics whose name is literally Phil a Man Ass, which is, he's a good artist though.
All right. With that, guys, I need to flop over to Rumble here.
Let's go.
This is on the flop, but I got a couple super chats to read real quick, but I want to address one chat that's not a super chat here because I love these. With the Grain says, Nick is a fucking idiot in this case. He is not a stupid lawyer, but this legal take is awful. First of all, this isn't much of a legal take. This is a strategy take, but the legal take, let's clarify this really quickly. The legal take that consistently negatively associating a brand that is owned by someone else in an active trademark dispute while they're arguing that you are devaluing their brand by doing things that make them look bad is not a good strategy. And I've said before, now twice, including yesterday, I don't think that this is the greatest trademark case. The problem is that it was Ripaverse fans, and now a little bit, Eric, are making their case better, not by the day, by the hour. By the hour, they are out there. They're calling this ministry fake Christians. They're calling them scammers. They're calling them greedy. They're saying that there are people in this chat saying that these people are scumbags, bad Christians, liars, charlatans. All of those types of things being said are associating that brand with the ISOM comic. They're creating confusion.
A war between the two brands that are drawing them together and interlocking them. They're going to cause more confusion, even more confusion. Yeah, and also more bad feelings and more reason to be punitive about this when really it could have been settled. It's not going to be pretty no matter what. It's embarrassing. It's really humbling. Can you imagine this? Like having to go, man, listen, I made a comic book, $3.7 million, $2 million like time around. I made like $6 million on this comic. And clearly it's people know what it is. And now I got to pay you guys. That's embarrassing. I got to pay you guys to be able to continue to make my comic. Who the hell are you?
It sucks.
Yeah, it's so embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. I get it. Like I feel for Eric. It's the worst thing in the world, and the temptation is to want to fight. But you see, the trademark court, trademark law, is a bitch. Like it's very open and shut. If you own the trademark and it's being infringed, the courts don't care. They just don't. They're just like, okay, and the damages are severe. They're really bad.
And the problem is again, not blaming Eric for being successful and not blaming Eric for the actions of trolls or fans. It's not his fault. Now people can try and say, well, maybe he's created an environment. I don't get into that or do that. I know that's out there, but literally, I don't hold people accountable for what fans or followers do because you never actually know who's a fan or follower doing a thing. Just because they say it or seem to be on your side doesn't mean they are. This is the internet. People lie. Let's be honest. People lie on the internet all the time. It's not his fault that this has happened where the streams are crossing. But anything perpetuating the crossing of the streams builds the ministry's case, a case that started off weak. And let's go back to just the very beginning. One of the very beginning statements that he made was we were blindsided because we thought we were on a productive path of negotiation. And then suddenly they're not. What happened? A lot of people started spamming the ministry, telling them they were terrible. And it built up and it built up and the negative association built up. Like, All Caps Comics, your former employee, and I have both been criticized for suggesting that fans might be fanning the flames, so to speak, and making things harder. And they're like, why are you telling us not to fight? Like, I'm not telling you what to do or not do. I don't care. But you got to understand that, like, your actions
hurting Eric. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. We love the fans. We definitely love the fans, but I think everybody needs to learn strategy, and they need to learn a little bit more about how to fight a war effectively. How to, I'll call it peep game. You got to be out there. You got to learn how to peep game, which is to recognize the game of your opponent. And I will say, ISOM, the ministry, I'm peeping their game right now. They have serious game. They hold all the cards right now. And the harder we punch them, the harder we push them, the harder we fight them, denigrate them, cause them harm, the more damage we do to Eric July when this thing eventually goes before a judge. It's as simple as that. So we got to just kind of go, pull back, be angels, and let this thing ride out on the merits. That's the peep game.
And it's really tough because Eric's going to go into why he picked the names, and it's a touching story. But if my relative is named Toyota, I don't get to make a Toyota scooter.
My great grandpappy Disney, Colin Disney, came over here, and fought the Revolutionary War. And I'm very proud of him. He fought really fucking hard against these upstart colonists who were trying to break away from, he was from England. Of course, that's my side of the family. Fought fucking hard to destroy America. And I want to honor him with my own, but I know that I can't do it.
Yeah. It's
hard.
It's unfortunate. Like, it sucks. Again, the situation sucks, but there are ways around it though. But okay, let me do these super chats and then we'll we'll go over to Rumble. Kate of the Swiss says, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Late and Gay stream. Grab your complimentary Baldo at the door, please. He also says, streamer excuses. Yes, that's my opening segment because I'm always late. Nazer says, I don't like drama, Nick Drunkita, for lols. Oh, I haven't even started drinking yet. We should do that. C Goody says, wait, EVS is a fellow Philly guy? I thought he was a Jersey gay. Kate of the Swiss says, hopefully Eric can contain his white bread ass ninja spurging. Oh, come on. Don't do that. Why would you do that?
White bread ass niggas, man.
What the hell was that?
That was what Eric called me.
That's what he called you?
Yeah.
Why aren't you mad at him?
So funny. It's so funny. It was funny.
God,
That was funny. Man,
Okay.
he got me there. That was good. Matthew Self says, EVS, your art is superb. Not a comic guy, but Rackets, Unbox, Cyberfrog, and Locals, and the art is amazing.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Please back Cyberfrog 3 Red Extermination on Indiegogo. Support indie comics and Cyberfrog.
Yeah, if you like the art, even if you're not a comic guy, I'm not a comic guy. That's pretty clear. Like I'm
It's a lot of fun. It's a really good story. It's a survivalist story against giant alien hornets. There's a frog and a salamander and the remnants of the human race. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a good story.
Nazer says EVS related to Ethan. Life too short to exercise Klein. Are you related to Ethan Klein?
Yeah, on a first name basis. Ethan Klein. Yeah.
Xander, there's brand confusion. Xander Rand says, can you review Cyberfrog with Coach Red Pill? Yeah, I'll go to the Ukrainian prison.
Is he okay? Is he all right?
I heard he was in a work camp in Ukraine.
That's the best thing for
Now,
him,
as a strategy,
honestly.
since we're talking strategy, Ethan, if you're in the Ukraine, for example, and Russia is invading your country, should you broadcast your love of Mother Russia during this time? Like, is that a good strategy option?
It just seems like a bad time to do that, unless you want to go to war.
I think you said peak game. I think
game. At that point, Putin's got the game. Recognize. Best recognize.
Dusklight says, is the New Jersey meetup going to happen? I would like to do a meetup in New Jersey, but I don't have current plans to do one.
Let's go to Atlantic City. Nick, I'll take you to all the casinos. We'll have a great time. We'll party, we'll drink, we'll play blackjack.
That sounds fun. Hayden75 says, but he breaks down what it seems to be. Watch the whole video. There are multiple groups using ISOM as a religious acronym. Yep, there are. We'll talk about that. Samurai Knight says, happy Otoya Yamaguchi Day. Never forget the hero. Was he the guy that stabbed that commie? Is that Otoya Yamaguchi? You know that video? He's an artist. Yeah, he's the Japanese right-wing ultranationalist youth who assassinated Injiro Asanuma, chairman of the Japan Socialist Party. He like goes up on stage while the guy's speaking and just like katanas him in the stomach. It was wild.
Wow. When was this?
1960.
Oh.
Let's see. Here we go. Steven says, you said yesterday you didn't think Eric infringed on their mark. I don't. But it's not up to me. And when I first reviewed the case, it was weaker. It has since generated more brand confusion and specifically damage to the ministry. I don't think it's a great case. I'm not a trademark lawyer, though. Eric's lawyers clearly think it's a good case. Well, I mean, that's kind of what they're representing. But ISOM's lawyers also seem to think it's a good case. That's how law works.
I don't think it's a good case. I think it's going to get thrown out, and I really hope so. I hope it gets thrown out soon because this shit is expensive.
That's what I said. People keep getting after me, but I legitimately have never, like, I've wanted this thing to go away with no money to Eric. Like, I think it sucks. I think it's stupid. But there are problems that are getting worse. And, you know,
I agree with you.
That could change that. So he says, today, both of you are arguing that he has. Genuinely curious, which is it? So maybe you said this before. I tried to clarify, or you missed the clarification. That's okay. When I'm speaking from the perspective of the ministry, I'm assuming at this point their argument. When I'm speaking from Eric's perspective, I'd be assuming his argument. Like, that's kind of how you have to look at an adversarial system. Since I don't know what the outcome will be, because a whole lot of factors go into it, and ultimately, and this is the real risk. This is a real problem with Trademark. You have a guy subjectively determining what is infringing based on things people bring in. And I know people are like, well, it's just trolls, it's troll emails, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That judge may not agree with you. And he may agree with you and say, yeah, but trolls may have done this, but you also didn't have to use the mark. And now that you use the mark and now the brand is associated with it, just because it wasn't your actions does not matter, because the association to the thing that you don't own is the problem, not how it became associated. Again, if I own a small Toyota scooter shop and Toyota doesn't ever even find out about me because it's like I just put a sign up on my garage, and then suddenly it goes viral online because I do OnlyFans from my Toyota scooter shop, and it's really popular because I ride my scooter naked and upside down. And then that goes viral on TikTok, and now I have 50 million hits on it because it's really impressive what I do on OnlyFans. Suddenly this Toyota scooter shop starts getting a massive amount of business. Online orders come in, and like I have to expand. I buy a big retail space. I'm like, Toyota super scooter, right? Like with the Japanese accent and everything. It's not my fault that I was naked upside down on a scooter and someone filmed it and then I stole it and put it up on my OnlyFans. That's not, it was for me. Okay. So, but that doesn't matter. That was never the plan for the scooter shop. But it incidentally became popular, and now it infringes on Toyota's trademark.
That's what I said. Like, Eric's like a victim of his own popularity and the fact that everyone's talking about him. And if the comic book was just a little less popular, maybe it would have flown under the radar.
Right. But again, it's always the mark. Steven says, why bring EVS on if he's just going to take the side of the school on every issue? You're already doing that. I have not taken the side of the school on every issue. Very clearly have stated both times I've covered this before, I don't think it's a great case. Yesterday, I thought there were some interesting new arguments. Today, they're getting worse. This video makes it worse because now it's not just the fans talking about the brand negatively. These are problems.
Like I've taken any side at all. It's kind of an interesting sort of, I guess it's a little bit of a Rorschach test,
Yeah.
I'm entirely neutral about this. This doesn't affect my life in the slightest. But it's interesting. It's compelling internet drama, and I like it.
Bobby0081 says, thanks, bro. Rael says, atheism is a non-profit organization, but Ismail Hania Gaming says, I have put a jihad on both of you. Allahu Akbar. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Jihad's good. Sounds like something you get at like Christmas time, or maybe it's one of those Muslim holidays. Do you get a jihad like for your, is that like a bar mitzvah?
Not yet, but maybe after this stream, we'll both get one. Let's hope so.
Bobby says it's embarrassing not to check to see if ISOM was an existing thing. That's 100% on Eric. Bad Dragonite says, as a rep for Cyberfrogs Anonymous and the charity for cybernetic amphibians, I hereby challenge Ethan to a duel for control of the Cyberfrog name and or a stick of gum and demand satisfaction.
No, I'm not fighting I'm not physically fighting anyone with a sword for the right to the thing that I made up. No.
I think the demand of satisfaction is the hardest part of that. Like, you can try, but
I'm already satisfied.
Yeah, no, but they're satisfying them. Like, that's a lot of pressure.
Get a girlfriend. How about that?
Jasper Plan 9 says the unbreaded ISOM problem solved. You're welcome. That could be really fun. Gosh, man, it'd be funny. Gimpy Lee says, hey, Ethan Klein Giffen. Nick, why is it okay to say chink during unbreaded, but not the N word? When's the last time you had an Asian on your show? I think it was Grums. Mark Kern, I think, was the last Asian I had on my show. It's been a while though. Maybe I said the armor thing too much. Okay. Why aren't these showing up? Gimpy Lee, sorry, I meant to ask if Ethan knew Keith Giffen. Do you know Keith Giffen? Yeah,
he was a good friend of mine. He came to mine and Andrea's wedding in 2017. He wasn't invited. but he was there. And was an extremely funny and kind man, hilarious guy. He looked like he weighed about 35 pounds his entire life. I'll miss him. I really will. He had great ideas. I did get to work with him a few times at DC Comics, and like I said, I will definitely miss him. He was one of the good ones.
I've never heard of him, but I've never heard of anybody. Steven says, I didn't hear your explanation. My bad. It's not your bad. You're fine. Don't worry about it. Carson Depp says someone associated with Masterson started this. And we're going to have to get to that after the Rumble switch. Guys, 25 seconds will be Rumble exclusive. See you there. If you don't go there, we'll see you tomorrow. Andrew Bronco will be on, and we will be reading his hilarious letter from the Colorado District Attorney's Office, auctioning off the shirt that they demanded he return to them, and probably drafting a response over liquor. So it'll be a fun show. See you guys then. Or go to Rumble and watch the rest of this, because we got a decent grip more video to talk about. Peace.